This episode of the SwitchCast is produced by Timothy J. Freely, our honored patron and Switch Knight.
Hi everyone, I'm Casey.
And I'm JV.
And this is the SwitchCast, the Nintendo Switch podcast. And we have a huge show for you this week, and not to mention a whole bunch of new games to talk about, and some interesting topics for discussion actually today.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, and I'm excited to go for it.
Yes, and we have we're going to go dive right into here and not waste any time and jump into the meta and just talk about some of the things coming up with the site. I believe this weekend, within 24 hours or when this posts, you have something big.
Yeah, that's right. So we're finally hosting our first single-day Switch Cup tournament that's not as big as the ARMS one previously. It's one of just a recurring series of smaller tournaments that we gather to have fun with. The game we chose, as I mentioned last week, is Puyo Puyo Tetris. It's happening on Friday, 8 p.m. Central Time, so go check out the Facebook group or the Discord chat and sign up there. There's no commitments, it's just for fun with maybe a few prizes along the way, but I definitely want to get these smaller, less hectic tournaments going on a more regular basis, Casey.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to push for at least something of this size, maybe even on a weekly basis, or every week one of us can cover it. Like, I might run one next weekend, and just to have something going, even if it's not like for any particularly big prize, just a focus point for us to get around and play something, maybe even something that we haven't really focused on in a little while, like you're doing with the Puyo Puyo Tetris right now.
Right, exactly. So we definitely still have big tournaments planned for the future, like the Splatoon tournament and other big tournaments later on, but I feel like smaller weekend tournaments, they're going to be fun to have.
Yes. And I just want to say, actually, something I just finished playing, not to jump the gun on the game time, but something I just finished playing literally maybe 30 minutes before we recorded today. I finally beat Breath of the Wild.
Oh, that is amazing. That's iconic, Casey. How'd you feel?
I was saving it. Like, I was trying not to get to the end until I was completely ready to do everything. And, I wanted to sort out a bunch of, not like do every side quest, but just do enough, collect all the memories, and then dive into it. But the main thing I'm bringing it up here is because now that I finished it, I feel like it is a fair point in time to have the Switch Topics episode we mentioned about Zelda Breath of the Wild, where we're going to dive in really deep. And I don't know if you finished it yet, or if you necessarily want to hold off on this until you're ready, but I'm ready to have a bunch of our patrons join in a little roundtable discussion and kind of dissect Breath of the Wild in an extra episode, not replacing a SwitchCast episode, but maybe next week we might do a roundtable discussion, go in depth about the game, and just post that as an extra Switch Topics episode.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely hyped for that. We've been holding off on talking about Breath of the Wild in depth for quite a while now, and I think you're right. It is about time for us to delve in and talk shop.
Have you been able to finish it yourself?
I haven't, but I've been in the same boat as you. I've kind of wanted to hold off and savor my time with the game. But you're right. It is about time for us to just finish and discuss.
All right, so you're in. Awesome. Yeah. All right, very cool. We will work that out, guys, and we're going to try to figure it out, but I'm reaching out to some of the patrons in the Discord chat. I'll make a post on the Patreon page as well. We're not going to be able to have probably everybody who wants to be on it, but I think having a decent, maybe a 5-person panel, including us two, to go into it from a bunch of different angles and maybe get some people who have, a different take.
Right, exactly.
All right, sounds cool. That's in the future. I also believe you have something set in the future ready to go.
Yes, so it's been a long time coming. There was lots of bank-related issues and lots of internal-related stuff we had to deal with, but now we've set that all straight, and we are ready to ship out our patron prizes.
Yes, people have been asking about these on and off. I mean, like, you guys have been patient, but it was a lot harder to get all our ducks in a row with this, including some weird problems that arose. But yes, not only the prizes for the patrons, but also we can finally start shipping out the prizes for all the contests that people have been participating in.
Right, I'm excited for you guys to finally get the goods that you've earned. So Pedro, thank you for listening, thank you for being there. Your stuff is coming to you within the next week. I'm excited for you to play it.
So let's not waste any time. Let's get into what we've been playing in the game time.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, JV, you teased us last week a little bit, and you got a little bit of the intro, but I'm hoping today you have some more of the juicy details about Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle.
Yeah, Casey, I'm honestly... This game is good. It's real good. I covered the basic premise of Mario and Rabbids in the previous episode, but in this episode, I definitely wanted to start talking about the basic mechanics of the game, which I'm actually pretty surprised by.
So how far are you in it right now? Like how many hours or stages are you?
So I'm in the first few worlds, so I'm not super deep into it quite yet. I've gotten most of the mechanics unlocked, and I'm knee deep into it, but I'm not immersed in it completely.
Okay.
Yes, so just a couple hours, maybe 4 or 6 hours in, and there have been a lot of aspects that did surprise me in this game. So, as I mentioned previously, you're traversing through different worlds on isometric platforms and moving your characters around, but I didn't actually expect just how much exploration is encouraged in the game. Yeah, there's different puzzles that you solve. There's those red rings where you collect all 8 coins, and that gives you a prize.
So you're actually poking around, jumping around stages trying to find these things.
Right, yeah, you're moving around, not necessarily in the direction you need to go for the next stage, but you're moving around collecting coins, going through pipes to get to different islands, going to different locations, and that gives you its own set of bonuses. Yeah, and once you really reach certain checkpoints within the overworld, the game transitions into the battle view really seamlessly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you go through the overworld, you reach a checkpoint, it plays a pretty charming animation, and throws you straight into the action.
Cool.
So have you seen videos of the gameplay so far, Casey?
Just a couple. I mean, they're everywhere, and people have been trying to link to just funny scenes. So I've seen a lot of like these just like comical kind of transitions or battle intros.
Yeah, the whole game is filled with these comical moments and these little animation quirks that add charm to the game. And I have to admit, I hate Rabbids.
I know you mentioned them being the minions.
And no, as far as I get into the game, no, they're minions. They're white rabbit minions. I'm sorry. And I don't like minions. I don't like Rabbids necessarily. But just considering how charming the animations are and how pretty humorous a lot of the situations it poses are, and there's a lot of personality here. There's a lot of charm, and even though I hate them, I can't help but think they're kind of adorable sometimes.
Oh, did you get that first day one DLC, I imagine? Did you get any of that extra stuff that came out? Okay.
I definitely wanted to start fresh. I didn't want to pull any of the DLC stuff quite yet, since I kind of wanted to see what it would be like if I didn't get any of the extras.
Okay.
Yeah, like a standard turn-based strategy game, you control characters on a grid in order to defeat enemies. In this game, your characters have 3 different actions they can take: shooting, moving, and special abilities. The primary method of attacking is shooting your enemies with a blaster from long range, which is surprising in a Mario game for Mario to use a blaster.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But you can also come into direct contact with the enemy and perform a dash attack before your primary shot, which is an interesting take.
That's interesting because, I just thought of this now. I've never played a strategy or a tactics game where range is the primary attack. Most of the ones I played involve melee combat, and you augment that with range attackers. But if you don't have like a melee guy, your ranged fighters are usually pretty dead in the water.
Right, exactly. It's interesting in the way they handle it here. You have a movement action that you can take, but if you move your character directly on top of the opponent, you can still move your character away into wherever position you'd like. So you're essentially doing like a drive-by melee attack before you go into the position that you want to do.
Okay.
The game is also really mobile, since your units can super jump off of each other to get even more ground to cover.
Very cool. And how many units do you typically have in a battle?
So far, I've unlocked 4 characters.
Okay.
And you're only allowed three party members total. One has to be Mario, and the other has to be one of the Rabbids. So you can't just do a full Mario team or a full Rabbids team.
Okay, that's interesting.
But from there, you can mix and match based on whatever you need.
All right, very cool.
Yeah, so I did want to mention the cover mechanic of the game, which I like a lot. Essentially, you have 100%, 50%, or 0% chance of hitting your target based on whether they're in no cover, half cover, or full cover, respectively.
Huh.
And I like that in this game because those percentages are set. There's no in-between, and there's little ambiguity.
And there's not like 10 different factors you have to like, all right, well, he's on a partial cover, but he's slightly elevated, so that brings it up by 5.5%.
Yeah, so it's not 64, 73%. And even if you miss, if they're hiding behind a destructible cover block, it does guarantee that block gets hit.
Oh, so there might even be a reason to fire on someone who has a 0% chance to hit them just to take out the cover.
Yes, there's these special blocks called special blocks. There's these cover walls you can hide behind called special blocks, and even if you hit them for 0% chance, if you hit the wall in front of them, it releases an area of an effect which can damage or have certain hindrances towards the opponent, which I like.
Okay. All right, cool.
But yeah, ultimately, sometimes there's even just benefits to missing, which I liked about this game, and I thought it's actually pretty deep for what it is.
Nice. Now, what about the customization of the characters? Have you been able to equip them and with different gear and level them up in certain ways?
Yeah, this is honestly another surprising element of the game to me. Each character has skill trees that you can customize and special weapons you can equip, which helps you kind of change the focus of each of the characters that you have available to you.
Okay.
Yeah, for example, Mario is generally offense-based with kind of a short to mid-range focus, but you can tune him to be counterattack heavy or party attack buff centric. Rabbid Luigi is a kind of a dash attacker where you can go in, do a drive-by dash, and then move away. But you can tune him to focus more on debuffing or even towards his area of effect secondary weapons.
Okay, cool.
And Rabbid Peach is defense-based, though you can focus her on self-defense, party healing, or dash attack buffs. So even though you only have a certain number of characters total, there are lots of different directions you can take with these guys, and mix and matching a combination that would work for the situation is very interesting.
All right, cool. What kind of challenge have you felt on the stages?
A lot of the early challenges that I had were figuring out what the win conditions were for a map.
Okay, I was going to actually ask that now. One of my big qualms I sometimes have is these games, basically the mission always being defeat all opponents. I like seeing different kind of win conditions. So you're saying that they're sometimes not even easy to find.
Well, no, it's sometimes there are different win conditions. For example, one of the early stages I ran into, you're stuck between a bunch of enemies, a couple pipes, and an area that you have to get at least one of your units to.
Okay,
now,
cool.
When you're in this situation, should you charge head-on into the enemy's line of fire while using your abilities to mitigate the attacks? Should you use super jump capabilities to flank the opponent, putting them into a weaker position and going around to sneak a unit towards that win condition area? There's the different questions and maneuvers that you have to figure out, and that's part of the puzzle of this game. And I love that. I really miss that on the Switch. I don't think anything scratches that itch right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely nothing like this on the Switch yet, and that's why it's really probably the best way to kick it off a strategy game on the console, because strategy is always, it's a pretty cloistered demographic. I feel like you either are a tactics kind of player, or you're just not, or you probably never played one before. This is something that someone like you and I are interested in, but I feel like there's a lot of people who may have never played a strategy game who are picking this up right now.
Right. The whole presentation of this game screams fun and quirky and lighthearted, which is generally different from the mood you get from other tactics games. Right?
Yeah, all the ones I know deals with very serious issues, generally speaking.
Yeah, like in Advance Wars, that's about as lighthearted as I can think for a turn-based strategy game, and you're still killing people. And there's still, dark twists to it sometimes.
Right,
There's still sabotage and betrayal and, those types of themes going on. But in this, it's all Rabbids being silly and quirky, Mario having a bit of fun with these weird new characters, and it's a good time.
Now, without giving any spoilers, of course, I keep seeing people mention the first boss having like some awesome, amazing experience with that. Is there something? Did you get to that first boss that maybe I'm hearing about here?
So the first boss is pretty noteworthy, just because of how it's really a conglomeration of the Rabbids franchise and the Mario franchise.
Okay.
That boss is, I don't want to hype it up too much, but it's essentially a sign that I'm going to spoil it. The boss is Rabbid Kong. It's a gigantic Donkey Kong, but he's in Rabbid form. And it's just a perfect way to encapsulate how quirky this game is and how on the nose everything is in this game.
Very cool. All right.
Now,
awesome.
I do have to say, the game can get hard, like very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine people who are casual strategy gamers might have a difficult time sometimes with progressing, because there might be certain encounters that bottleneck your progress.
Yeah.
But at the start of every single encounter, they heavily advertise that you can set it to an easy mode, which buffs your stats and stuff, so you'd have an easier time dealing with the level. But yeah, that's just one of those features that make it more so that more casual players can enjoy the game.
Very cool, very cool. I mean, so obviously you're liking it so far, and you're probably going to play it. But it does seem like the kind of game you're not going to beat this in the next week or two. You're probably going to be playing this for like at least a month, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's definitely a game that I'm like going through, but I can stop and put it down for a while, pick it up, and then just play a stage or two again.
All right, sounds cool.
It's fun, and once I get through the game, once I finish it, I'll definitely give you guys my final say.
Okay, very cool. We'll look forward to that in the not too distant future. Exactly. I've been playing something though this week that I did get through really quickly, but that's the nature of the game, and it's not a knock on the game.
Right. Some games are just built to be quicker to beat.
Yes. I picked up the Azure Striker Gunvolt Striker Pack.
Oh.
Which, yes, this is the combination pack. It is Azure Striker Gunvolt 1 and 2, and it is updated for the Switch. And these are very Mega Man-like games because they're made by a lot of the Mega Man-like people. I feel like this is what Mighty Number 9 should... This is actually what the successful way that game could have gone. That's how I look at this.
Yeah, honestly, I'm glad Azure Striker Gunvolt came out before Mighty Number 9, because it was the game that's supposed to tide us over towards completion, towards Mighty Number 9, but then it ended up being better.
Yes, it definitely did. And it does a lot of things. You feel like it's definitely in the same world or the same style as a Mega Man game, but it takes a lot more risks with doing new things that pay off in really good ways. Now, I've mentioned Gunvolt before, and I'll just recap the first one, at least that I played on Game Boy. I only bought this to play Gunvolt 2 and maybe see how Gunvolt 1 was upgraded for the Switch. But Gunvolt 1, basic gameplay is, again, you are, a dude with lightning powers, and you have a gun, but it's not really your weapon. It does like pea shooter damage. The point of your gun is when you hit enemies with it, you mark them, you tag them, and then when you use your lightning, you create this sphere around you, and it just kind of jolts anything that you've marked. Now, it has a little bit of a power meter, so you can't just constantly be using it, but you can tap double down to like recharge it faster. But you have to use that in combination with your gun in order to hit things, to trigger, background contextual things like turn an elevator going on. It has the Mega Man thing where you play stages, you reach a boss. The bosses are hard and cool, and they all have a unique power that you can then take from them and augment your own abilities with. The stages are cool. They do lots of crazy things. They're not just themes, like here's the ice stage or here's like the fire stage. They do things where here's a stage where you're using your electric powers to walk on the ceilings by magnetizing yourself. So you're playing it upside down at points, and then you'll flip back right side up here and there. There's a very fast pace. It flows very smoothly, and it has this cool thing called the kudos system, which is... The kudos system is how you build up score on a stage. You want to build up score because you use that at the end of the stage to get loot, basically. And you use loot and items that you get to craft new items, basically like modules to give you little abilities on stages and stuff like that. But the kudos system, in the first one, you get a score multiplier throughout the stage, but you would reset your score if you ever like messed up or took too many hits. Now they've actually augmented. There's 3 modes that you could do the kudos system. You could pick cautious, gutless, or fearless, and they all just kind of have like a little spin on it. Like with one of those modes, if you ever get hit once, your score's reset, but you start out with a really high multiplier. Whereas the opposite of that would be one where you start off with a low multiplier, but you'll never lose your points. So it's like a safer way just to build up points that way. But if depending on how much risk you're willing to take, you can pick a different system and really rack up a ton of points and get all the items you want. They also, I noticed they updated a lot of the graphics. It looks really it looks like the kind of graphics that you expect from Blaster Master that we played before, right?
Right.
It's that level of retro. It's a nice improvement in polish from the 3DS game. You wouldn't even be able to tell this was originally a 3DS game, except for a couple little minor things in the background here or there, like the menus obviously use a few of the original things. But it's cool.
Right. I know when I played Azure Striker Gunvolt, what really stood out to me was the physics of the game. Everything felt fluid, but sometimes weighty when they need to be. And whenever you're shooting out your electric attack on someone that you just marked, you're actually floating a little bit, and it feels like you're assaulting them with a lightning strike. And it's a very visceral feeling that feels good.
Yes, and when you let out the special attacks, like his finishers, they cut to this whole screen-filling image, and they're really high-def images. And, he has a little quote, and it's very stylish, and then he lets out this crazy effect.
And I feel like that's part of what made Azure Striker Gunvolt stand out above something like Mighty No. 9. Mighty No. 9 really kind of felt a little bland, a little straightforward and cookie cutter, while Azure Striker Gunvolt really bled personality and heart.
Yeah, I mean, the main character is just a character. He has style. He's kind of he's kind of a little arrogant. He's very anime-ish, and he just has attitude. And I buy it, and I dig it, and I like him. And all the characters are like that. Actually, they all have over the top anime style, and they talk a lot. During fights, it's a little distracting because some of them are constantly saying things to you. There's one guy who's rocking out and saying all these rhymes to you while you're fighting, and they incorporate the text in a cool way. They don't just use text boxes. It's almost like a comic book style with these weird strips of text in the corners. It's cool to see that.
Yeah, this game has style for sure, and Mighty Number 9, it felt like such a cookie cutter Mega Man attempt.
Right. It looked like they just tried to remake Mega Man without anything. Like, they didn't do anything except just make bad levels. They also upped the frame rate. It's 60 frames per second in this game too. I want to make sure I mention that as well. But okay, so that was everything really to the first one there. Now Mighty Gunvolt, Azure Striker Gunvolt 2. That adds a few other little things. There's now voice acting, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that. Is there voice acting during the gameplay as well? Yes, during the gameplay, like they are. I mean, it's like in Japanese, some of the stuff they're saying. So yeah, but still, the tone and expression within the voice acting during the gameplay, I feel like that should add to it. I think it actually works in this kind of game because honestly, some of the guys are saying stuff that if it was in English, it would feel cheesy and I would probably cringe a little. But when they say these ridiculous lines in Japanese and I just have to read it, it kind of makes it work, you know? Boku no namae wa Kevin desu. They also, the other main thing is there's another character in this game called Copen. Interesting. Copen is a very different gameplay style, and he has his own story, and you can go back and forth between the two characters. Copen he's harder to, I think he's probably the elite mode of this game. He's a little harder to get your hand around his mechanics. He's not as straightforward as tag him and zap him. He does these dash attacks, and he dashes into enemies, and he kind of marks them like that. So you can't play it as safe with him. You have to charge the enemy, and when you dash him, they're marked, and then you have these like weird like drones surrounding you, and they do the attacks when you use them. So that's interesting. So is it similar to how Mighty Number 9's dashing system works? No. Mighty Number 9's dashing system was just literally going through enemies and trying to combo them. With this, you tag them, and then you can get a little distance once they're tagged. You don't have to like do the mirror's edge kind of thing where you're constantly moving forward, and once you lose momentum, you're beat. You have to get in, then you could back off, but it forces you to get a little bit more in there. But comboing it with some of your attacks and the way your attacks are deployed, it's just a little more finesse involved. I think it's hard. It's easier on the bosses, apparently. I've heard people say that he just takes down the bosses in no time, whereas the stages themselves are actually a little harder for Copen. Interesting. Okay. I feel like that's a really interesting twist on that game, and I feel like it's worth having a different character for that. Yeah, and they have two stories, though the length of the game is overall the same as the first game, but this game is split up with, instead of it maybe being an 8-hour game, it's 2 4-hour stories with each of the characters. Okay. You know? But, so if you don't like Copen, you might not get as much out of Gunvolt 2, but I'm digging him. I'm getting used to him. He has a different type of personality too. He's the kind of character I don't like usually, but he fits because he's kind of the mirror of Gunvolt in that he's a little more stoic. He's a little more like, I don't know, he's like, oh, come on, you really said that? Don't tell me that. That's just, like, he kind of like cringes at the anime-isms of the other characters, whereas Gunvolt just out-animes them. He's like, yeah, well, I'm gonna do this. Is he the Sasuke to Gunvolt's Naruto? Sure. I've watched that show. Is he is either the Vegeta to the Goku? Okay, let's say that. That works. That I get, yes. Okay. Yes. It's a trope. It's very much an anime trope, of course. Yes. There's also these challenges you can accomplish, and there's a lot of replayability, I'll say, on the stages, because you want to farm for items, so you might play a stage a few times just to farm up items, like I mentioned, and when you do this, you get good at the stages, and then you realize, oh man, I am like looking so cool right now that I've mastered this stage and I could do all these cool jumps and I found a different way to beat this part of it. So unlike a lot of Mega Man games, I mean, like Mega Man people play over and over because they're just great. But this, I play it over and over stages because I'm learning more and it feels really cool to master these characters. So I'm hooked. Yeah, I'm really glad that they're starting to release these games on the Switch, because it was actually one of the games that was tethering me to the 3DS, other than Pokemon. Yeah. I bought Azure Striker Gunvolt on the 3DS.
Yeah.
It's one of the games that I like to revisit every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I just got to mention this. Did you ever play Super Contra? Not Super Contra. What was it? Contra 3? Contra 3.
Is that the one on the DS?
That was the one on Super Nintendo.
No.
Okay. No, there's a fight in this game that just reminded me of like the awesomest stage in that game, which was one of my favorite stages ever, where you're on motorcycles with machine guns and eventually get to this part where you're grabbing on the missiles and jumping off of missiles to like shoot at things. But there's a boss fight in this where you're fighting on a motorcycle and like someone else is driving. It's not card games. But you're on a motorcycle and you're fighting this boss guy and he's like zooming, and it's just like this really cool high speed chase scene that stuck out as just an awesome boss fight. That it starts out on the motorcycles and then you kind of go down to like the face to face.
I just love that these types of games can really sell an epic moment while still being 2D and pixelated.
Yeah, definitely.
It takes skill to do that, I think.
Yes, it does. It does. It definitely does. And the last thing I'll mention, they have challenges. If you're replaying the stage especially, you could try to, let's say, beat the stage in under 5 minutes, or, kill this many of the enemies, those sort of things. And you get extra little bonuses and perks for beating those different challenges. So it's another reason to keep playing stuff over and over. So even though it's only an 8-hour game, I think people can get a lot more out of it. And I saw some people saying, $40 for this pack. I don't know. That doesn't seem right it's not. Don't think of this as just a port of some 3DS game. This is 2 really good, really solid games, each of which is the quality of a Blaster Master or anything that Inti Creates has been cranking out lately. All awesome.
So you're saying Gunvolt 1 and Gunvolt 2 are about 8 hours each, right?
Yes, total.
That's 16 hours for a $40 game. That's not bad.
Yeah, I think it'll be more. That's just 8 hours to beat them. I like I said, if I wasn't reviewing new games every week for this site, I would be playing this a lot more over and over again. But I was able to get through it mostly this week. I will probably wrap it up before the week is over. And if I had time to, I would definitely be playing it a few more times and getting
that sounds
stuff.
great. All
right, so that is what we've been playing. Let's jump into the news and talk about what else is going on.
Let's do it.
All right, so news rundown.
Okay, so I know this was a little bit of a concern within the Discord community, but apparently some retail Nintendo Switch games might require you to own a micro SD card.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I'm gonna reserve my opinions on this until the community polls, because we got a lot of feedback on that. So I'm just gonna give you the facts here. But it seems like some games, at least right now, one game for sure is was it NBA 2K18?
Right.
That is going to require an SD card to access all of the features out of the box, at least. You can access. They're going to say you're going to have some modes and some playability without a memory card, but you're going to need to download stuff onto the SD card before you can access everything.
Yeah, I suspect that it might be because of the 32 gigabyte cartridge limitation. Some games probably require more than that, and the only way they would be able to fit it into your console would be to divide up the data between the cartridge and the digital download.
I mean, that seems to be why they're doing it. On the topic of memory cards, though, we also got word that there's going to be a Mario and Link themed micro SD cards on the way for Switch.
This is a little silly.
It is for something that goes inside your system and you never look at.
Yeah, the only thing that's really themed about it is the packaging that you're going to inevitably throw away.
Literally, that's it. I mean, it has the Switch logo on the card, it looks like. That's about it.
Yeah, but you're not going to be looking at that. It might be handy if you want to know which SD card was dedicated to your Switch if you remove it for some reason.
Yeah.
But no, this is silly. Why? Well, I know why, but it's silly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the big thing about this is that, we're always, when it comes to buying SD cards, I think the real key is just to find the best deal you can on the most memory you can get. And you usually have to, keep an eye out for a little while before one of those deals comes up. I know you usually point out when you see a good sale on there, but I don't think people are going to be focusing on just one brand. You're going to be looking for whichever SD card just has the best deal at a given time.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like this might be a move to make this the micro SD card requirement more palatable to some Nintendo fans. But yeah, we'll definitely have more opinions on it during the community pulse.
Yeah. All right. Well, something on plus side, just an interesting statistic. The first 6 months of Nintendo Switch's sales in Japan right now have been doing phenomenally better than the PS4 did in its first 6 months of sales. And this is according to figures from, Media Create, which is a Japanese retail tracker. And they're pretty well respected in this regard. They're usually the standard for keeping check on these sort of things. And so, to give the people the comparison, the PS4 sold 665,000 units in its first 26 weeks in Japan, and which is great. Please don't anyone think that I'm using this as a way to knock Sony. I have nothing against them. I love Sony. I own a PS3. I'm just using this as a point of comparison to how great the Switch is doing, which in that same length of time has sold 1.5 million units.
Right, so more than double the amount the PS4 sold.
Yes.
And when the PS4 came out in Japan, it sold like hotcakes. It's incredibly popular and is still popular to this day.
And they love PlayStation in Japan. It is a huge, they love Nintendo, but I think there's a very, almost probably I'd say that is the most hardcore Sony fan base is in Japan.
Right, exactly. And it's interesting that they noted that it took 69 weeks for the PS4 to reach 1.5 million units.
Yeah.
Which is awesome in its own right.
Yeah, it's really strong. It's good to see. And while we don't know what the numbers are like in the rest of the world, it's a pretty good
indicator.
Yeah, it's a pretty good indicator that it's been accepted, at least in the most hardcore place on earth to play games. And I think that it's a good sign. And, this is not meant to be the hardcore gamer system. This was built as more of a casual thing. And that's typically Japan is a market for the most hardcore. That's where the Vita did well, all right? The Vita reigned in Japan. It was great.
I do have to say, Japan culturally really prioritizes portable gaming over even just console gaming.
That is
true.
So
that's why the Vita was popular, the 3DS was popular, the PSP was even pretty popular in Japan when it was out. It didn't catch on as well everywhere else, but in Japan, the PSP was doing pretty well.
That's a good point. Yeah, they do gravitate towards whatever the most powerful portable is. And that's why, the things like the Vita and the PSP were able to make a name for themselves there.
Yeah, even if it didn't really get as popular elsewhere. And that's why the Switch is the perfect console for Japanese gamers, and why I am really hopeful and optimistic about hardcore Japanese games coming to the Switch in the future.
That's true. And we actually have a few of those to mention a little later down the line.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited.
On a minor note, the new version of the Switch OS was out, 3.02 or 3.0.2. This really doesn't have too much more than some stability improvements and some features like online features are now available to people in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Colombia, as well as Peru. So, hey, if you're listening to us over there, get online.
Yeah, exactly. So apparently, PayPal's having a special deal in the UK to offer £5 off when you spend £20 on the Nintendo eShop. This is a weird partnership between Nintendo and PayPal, but you UK fellows, take advantage of this deal.
It's free $5, yeah, and you know what? It's probably just a good idea because PayPal's probably getting a little cut from Nintendo's end of every transaction. So now they get you used to using PayPal instead of having to your credit card or whatever else people or buying those like the eShop cards from GameStop. They get you used to doing this. It becomes the more convenient thing for you to do. Maybe you start buying a few more eShop things, and PayPal gets their money back over the next year or two as they get their little fees from Nintendo. So it's probably a good idea for them. And you know what? It's $5 free in your pocket. So there's no reason not to if you're in the UK and you have access to PayPal.
Do they use the term bucks in the UK? I'm not
probably
entirely sure.
Not. I'm going to say quid. I'm going to go with £5.
£5. Yeah. The offer will last until September 24th or until 2,500 credits have been applied to your PayPal account. So you do have a time limit for this feature, but take advantage of it while you can. There are a lot of great eShop games for you UK folks to take to download.
Ridiculous number. I know last week we had a little confusion about what was going on with Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes, which apparently is the name of the title. It's not the other way around. We kept saying, No More Heroes, Travis Strikes Again. It's actually Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes. Ain't that weird? So anyway, we weren't sure because they mentioned that it was a collaboration with indie developers, and we thought maybe that means you're going to be playing some indie games inside of the game. But during an interview, that it's kind of more along the lines of incorporating their branding and some items in the game and some thematic aspects of these indie developers' games. Like, you're not going to be playing necessarily straight up some of these games as like mini games in there, but there's going to be like basically boss encounters or boss challenges at the end of each chapter that are going to be inspired by some of these games. And two of the ones that we actually got revealed were Hotline Miami and Shovel Knight, so we might have some sort of Hotline Miami theme, which seems pretty appropriate challenge.
So if you guys don't know, No More Heroes is a third-person beat-em-up game. In previous titles, you were supposed to defeat different assassins within the assassin ranking, and each of those assassins have a unique quirk and gameplay difference that makes it interesting. It looks like instead of different assassins having their own different quirk, each of the bosses that you encounter will be based on different indie games. And you're not necessarily going to be playing the indie game itself. You'll just be using the third-person beat-em-up gameplay, but in an indie world.
I think that's a much clearer way to say it than I said it.
Yeah, I definitely love that idea. I really want to see how Suda51 adapts all of these indie titles into the No More Heroes gameplay.
Yeah, because boss encounters are not a small thing in those games. I mean, that is what you really build up to. I mean, everything about those games was how to get to the next boss fight. And that was what really was the centerpiece of all the action, because they were all so different and just exciting in their own way.
So, when I first read about this concept, I was actually really inspired because I just remembered how interesting a game like Kingdom Hearts adapted 2D animated movies into 3D worlds that you can explore and fight in. And I feel like Suda51's gonna do that similar indie 2D conversion to 3D worlds in No More Heroes, Travis Strikes Again.
You did it wrong. You did it backwards too. See? I told you.
Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes.
It seems so wrong, but that's what he does. He does things just to mess with our brains.
Yeah, he really does. What a weirdo. What a cool, quirky, crazy weirdo. Now, another thing that I know some of our community is going to be hyped about, and Rin especially, is Stardew Valley. It's been officially submitted to Nintendo for approval.
I mean, there's a chance it'll be declined. Maybe it won't. It hasn't been. It might need some tweak here or there, but we've got our fingers crossed that it will be approved and it can be on the shop very soon.
Yeah, hopefully it's not another Pocket Rumble situation.
Oh, so how was this? Did you join the Splatfest this weekend, JV?
I was actually not able to compete in the Splatfest this weekend. I was pretty busy. How was it?
That's why we lost.
Oh, is that why? I'm sorry.
It's all on JV's head, my fellow Invisies.
So it looks like Invisibility won out on votes by 1%.
Yes.
A 2% difference. 51% invisibility to 49% flight.
So that's actually it's a lot closer than the last one's popularity contest. Popularity contest was.
Yeah, but 55% flight solo and 52% flight teams, and that was the victory margins.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's still consistent with the less popular team winning, but it's less popular by like 1% possibly.
Barely.
Yeah, so it's barely. So I don't know if that proves anything one way or the other, but hey, congratulations, Fly Guys.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'll be fun to see what the results are in future Splatfests.
Now, I think this is pretty interesting, actually, though. In Rolling Stone, they had an interview with some of the devs on Splatoon 2, and they talked about that issue we've brought up before of why do we have to play the stages that they prescribe at certain times of day and the modes? Why do they have to have the control when a lot of us probably would like to just say, I want to play, Rainmaker on Manta Maria right now. And, they don't let us. So the developer, he kind of put it this way. It's a very East versus West mentality, whereas maybe in the West we like to have players choose everything, and that might go into other things. Like when you're at a restaurant, it's not a big deal to say, oh, can I have some salt on my burger? Or could you give me some ketchup for this omelet? That might be actually, and this is actually a video I just watched today, that kind of a request would actually be insulting in a lot of European and Asian restaurants where they believe you should trust us. I have made this meal, and I know, trust me, I'm the professional. I know how to make the meal as enjoyable as possible for you. Do not ask me, the chef, the professional cook here, how to prepare the food for you to enjoy. So he's kind of been saying, similarly to that, this is how the game will be best enjoyed. Trust us. You will have more fun if you play on these stages at this times with the group, or that maybe it forces you into other play modes. And I kind of think that's an interesting, it's just a different philosophy. I can't say whether it's right or wrong, but it's interesting to see why they did that.
Right. And if you're just a completely Western-centric person, it might seem like a bit of a condescending statement for them to assume that they know what you want better than you. But you're right, it is a differing philosophy, and there is a vastly different mindset in Japan and in Eastern Asia and even in some areas of Europe about this type of stuff. The artists have a lot of say and lots of control over how the consumers experience their product.
Mm-hmm. And I think this one quote really summed it up great. They asked, so you think you know what we want better than we know what we want? And his response was, we think we know what you don't know you want. And so...
Yeah, and he uses the restaurant analogy, which is pretty understandable, to be honest.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, so what else we got here?
So there's going to be a new Shovel Knight amiibo, which is very interesting. I like that Nintendo is allowing these third-party developers to really get into the amiibo action.
Mm-hmm.
So they're releasing a Spectre Knight, Plague Knight, and King Knight amiibo 3-pack.
Yes.
Which all look really cool.
Nice little 3-pack, yeah. And Shovel Knight was the first third-party amiibo ever, if I believe correctly.
Right. Not counting the third-party characters in Smash. This is and it's also noteworthy that it's from Yacht Club Games, which is an indie development studio.
That's right. And I believe you had one of these when you were playing with Shovel Knight, right?
Right. Yes. It let me save a secondary character, which I could use in co-op mode.
Very cool. Yes. So it'd be interesting how those work with the new game that we got to see, or at least the new chapter of their games that's coming out very soon.
Right.
We also got a little confirmation here for another couple characters in Fire Emblem Warriors. We saw Male Corrin and Sakura. And Sakura's donning a bow and arrow, even though she was a healer. I guess they had to give her something.
Yeah, so I feel like they did have to make Sakura different from other characters.
But now what's Takumi's thing? That was like Takumi's thing. He was the bow and arrow guy. And a guy I hated.
You really hated Takumi?
Well, remember, of all the people that I had to fight on my end, he was the one I thought was the biggest jerk. And I know you told me, once you get to know him, he's all right. And maybe that's easier to say since, you stuck with his side of the family. But I always felt like he expected too much. He expected too much of me.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be interesting how they implement Sakura, because you're right, she is not necessarily a bow user.
Yeah, so...
I know for a fact that Takumi is also a bow user, but his attacks are very wind-based.
I gotcha. Yeah. For anyone who didn't take my advice to try out Oceanhorn in the past, there's going to be a demo for it coming out soon that you can get your own free taste of it off the eShop. In case you're someone like me, who maybe you just beat Breath of the Wild and you're looking for some more Zelda-type action.
Yeah, so on the next story, Sonic Forces has a release date in North America now, as well as pre-order bonuses.
Ooh, this looks like stuff you'd buy.
Yes, so apparently Sonic Forces is coming out November 7th on the Switch. If you pre-order, you get a Sonic Forces controller skin, which looks pretty cool for what it is. But what's most noteworthy is that it comes with in-game add-ons, like skins for your characters based on different franchises. So you can see Puyo Puyo, Super Monkey Ball, the monkey, the Knights character.
Oh, nice.
Jet Set Radio. And what's hilarious is that they have a Persona 5 skin, Casey. We totally forgot that Atlas was bought out by Sega.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. Now there's a Persona 5 tie-in here, which has spawned so many memes on the internet.
I'm just curious what type of the controller skin material and who made it, if they made it internally, because I know that we've had an overwhelmingly good experience. I've seen a lot of people buying skins, especially now lately. I just know that there's a lot of people now who have been a little bit wary of them after multiple places had either some problems with skin material for Switches in the past.
Right. I feel like it shouldn't be too much of a problem this is... Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't suspect too many problems.
Well, I'm just curious where, because I want to know where maybe I could be looking at to get my own skins in the future if I knew who was producing these.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah. It could just be internal, of course. That's always the option. But no, these are really cool, these little characters. I love these crazy crossovers. Just...
Yeah, Persona 5. A lot of people were making jokes about how the main character of Persona 5 is sharing his fursona.
God.
His furry fursona with people, and it's that one.
If you haven't checked, again, we have another Tips from the Wild on the news feed. If you want to go there, you can get a bunch of, eggs and stuff for your character in there, and they give you some suggestions about how to use them, including leaving your eggs in hot water baths. Apparently will in sauna, what do they call those, like the hot springs, will make them into something different.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I hope they do these for other games as well.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. And the last little bit of interesting, I guess, controversy was just kind of reminded me of when people went crazy about the icon for Snake Pass, and people were already disliking the icon for Lego Worlds, which looked kind of boring and just, it looked like a landscape made out of Lego blocks. Again, I don't care about this stuff, but people, complained, and they reacted really fast, and they added a much more adventurous looking icon in its place. Yeah,
it's definitely more vibrant and honestly a little busy.
Yeah.
But it's being pretty well received.
Yeah,
so
it's just funny.
Good on them for reacting.
Yeah, people reacted and they were like, okay, we're not going down that path. Let's just change it now.
It's just artwork they can re-upload. It's fine.
All right, down the pipe, we have a lot of interesting actually titles hinted at or confirmed. And the first one I saw was just in a Twitter post from the fine people over at Chucklefish. They were talking about how there's, when they were submitting the build for Stardew Valley, they also uploaded a picture of a game that looks very Stardew Valley-esque, but also featured a bunch of characters in like witches' hats, and it kind of looked like a magical school kind of setting. Many people also made the connection to that show I watched, what was it? Magical Witch Academia?
Little Witch Academia,
that's the one. Yeah.
And yeah, so a lot of people say Stardew Valley meets Harry Potter, Little Witch Academia. I think it's, we really just have a pixel screenshot teaser at the moment, so we can't really discern too much else from it.
As far as we know, it could be an expansion for Stardew Valley. It could be anything. We don't know, but it's just people thinking.
It's honestly a great concept, and I'd like to see how it progresses.
Let's see. We got Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2 was confirmed for be coming out November 28th.
Yes, I'm excited for this because Resident Evil Revelations were great games.
I actually never touched those ones.
Yeah, they came out on the 3DS a while back, and for a while, Resident Evil Revelations 1 on the 3DS was considered the best Resident Evil that was out at the time.
Oh wow!
That's how well received these were.
Another Rayart game, and because we can never get enough of their rhythm antics. This one's called Deemo.
Yeah, Deemo was originally on iOS or on mobile platforms, and now they're bringing it over to the Switch, just like they did with voice.
Do you tell us anything about how this one plays differently than that?
It kind of plays a bit more like a piano. So they're coming down, and you have to press buttons like a piano, and it's not quite as shifty as voice is.
Okay.
And most of the music is a bit more orchestral.
Gotcha. Earth. Okay, that actually I might be interested in that because, you know what, sometimes you get tired of the J-pop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. Snowcastle Games announced Earthlock Festival of Magic. Actually, it's going to be coming out on Wii U first, and that'll be coming out soon.
Interesting.
Yeah, still got some life in the old girl, but no date yet for the Switch. So we'll probably get a few more glimpses of what that'll look like. But, you know, there's some trailers and stuff. And this game, I actually didn't take a look at it. I'm going to look at some
isometric RPG type situation.
Okay, very cool. Siberia, that's coming out next month on the Switch. And this was a game I played a long time ago. It's a very cool point-and-click adventure. I haven't had too many of these on in a while. It was very artful, I would say, and you play as this character who is sent to this French village to negotiate for the purchase of an automaton factory, and then you find yourself, you know, kind of involved in some mystery involving the people behind that building. And I'd like to see how they update the art, because it was beyond beautiful when it came out, but that was years ago. So I want to see if they maybe upgrade the art for today.
Yeah, I'm looking at the trailer and it does seem a little dated.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the old PlayStation cutscene graphics now.
Yeah, that's one of the things. It's not quite up to snuff for today, but we'll see. Maybe it'll polish up a little bit before it hits.
Yep, and that comes out October 20th.
Poi. We saw this a while back. This is just the other platformer that feels very much like Mario.
Yes, it looks pretty interesting. It kind of reminds me of Oceanhorn in the sense that it has that parallel to a big Nintendo franchise.
Okay, yeah. So if you want to get Poi and Oceanhorn, you can have the the indie versions, the indie pair of Nintendo stars.
Which is, an interesting take.
Yeah. Redout was actually supposed to come out last week. We announced it as a new release, but apparently it's been pushed back to October 24th. So we'll still have to wait a little longer for this, like a futuristic racing game, basically.
Right.
Anti-grav racer. Nicholas makers of some of the fine titles that I've liked, like Cave Story. They just posted a teaser screenshot with a bunch of blurred out icons and some other icons of games that they're releasing. And so some people have been trying to figure out what these games were, and it seems very likely. And one of the blur out is almost obviously a screen of VVVVVVV. Yeah, that was a game I played on iPhone. It's one of those games. It's a platformer, side scroller, but where you jump up to, like, you switch gravity from I want to walk on the ceiling, I want to walk on the floor, kind of thing like that. Simple graphics, but it was a pretty fun game. They also believe that Code of Princess is one of the ones shown off in this screenshot, which was a side-scrolling brawler game that I did not like at all on 3DS.
I remember you being vehemently against it.
Yes, I was not a fan. But I do believe that they're probably going to be bringing... that this all kind of rolls into their upcoming fighting game, Blade Stranger, which is going to have characters from Code of Princess in it, so it makes perfect sense that would be coming out for the Switch too. And it looked like 1001 Spikes will be coming as well, which was one of those like super challenging mobile games where it was just like a whole bunch of like trap rooms that you had to survive your way.
Right, exactly.
Oxenfree coming in October. This was a really pretty cool concept. It was on Steam for a while, but it's I don't know how to explain this one. It's just kind of an atmospheric adventure game where most of the action is based on your decisions to what you say during conversations, and it kind of drives the plot in different directions, and it involves this island that you and your friends are on, and there's some weird messages that you're getting on your radio from some aliens or something that have been waiting there for hundreds of years, and should you wake them up? Do you wake them up? That kind of thing. And I think you're meant to play it over a few times and like see the different ways, and you can get messages by the way you tune your radio here. Kind of interesting.
Right. It's beautiful. The mood is pretty serene and melancholic, I would have to say.
Yeah, but it kind of builds up as you get through it. Like the tension starts building, and like you start realizing things are not going well.
Yeah, exactly.
Quest of Dungeons. This just looks like a roguelike. Everything that you think of when I say roguelike, that's what this is. That's really all.
Classic.
Classic. No, it's good stuff if you like that. Schlagdenstar.
Schlagdenstar.
This is just apparently a no Switch exclusive based on a German quiz show that's coming out mostly in some European countries, but it reminds me of a game I played called Buzz for PlayStation 2, I believe it was. Did you ever see Buzz?
I remember Buzz.
That was a pretty fun little quiz show game, but it had the literal buzzers for everybody that I liked.
That was pretty fun.
Yes. And even though this is one link, this is a... it felt like almost like a Nintendo Direct, but specifically by the people from Circle Entertainment and Fly High Works. And Circle did Voice and Kamiko. They did the Western versions of those games. And they just showed off some of their games one after the other. If you're interested in any more details on Deemo, SteamWorld Dig, I've seen a lot of these. Picantier, which is the 8-bitty kind of adventure game. We've seen Golf Story. The new one to me, out of all these that I wanted to point out, was called Opus, The Day We Found Earth. This is a game, watching the trailer in this video, there was no English and it's all in Japanese, but honestly, I started, it felt very emotional, and I feel like I have some kind of idea what this game is about based on this. It looks like you are a robot on a spaceship by yourself searching for Earth. It seems like either the other humans on the ship have died long ago and you've just kind of picked up the mantle, but it shifts between these two gameplay modes where you have to go to a telescope and you have to search the sky and try to find planets, and then you go and analyze them, then you go on a spaceship and you kind of explore the planets, and you're trying to find Earth, which was apparently like some legendary, it's so far in the future that Earth is just like a myth to the humans in the future. But it's this kind of sad little lonely game, and it has this really dramatic music that, I don't know, it just like, I got the emotion of the game from it.
Yeah, I feel like the little robot dude has it's a mix between WALL-E and Chibi Robo.
That's a really good analysis.
Yeah. And I dig it.
All right, so the new releases. Why don't you read the out now and I'll read the coming soon.
All right. So The games that are out now are Lego Worlds, Toho Kobuto 5 Burst Battle, RBI Baseball 17, More Fights, The Bridge.
More Fights been delayed, I just found out also. That's pushed to the 20th.
The Bridge, and Z Battle for Neo Geo.
Mm-hmm. That is I believe that's a shoot 'em up.
Right, shmup. Which, we're not hurting for shmups anymore. We used to have a shmup drought, but now we have a shmup flood. So there's Neurovoider, Double Dragon 4, and Lichtsphere? Double Spear Edition.
That's a day of German games, I gotta say.
Is it Lichtsphere or is it Lichtsphere?
I'm gonna go with...
Like a lich with a phylactery and everything.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Leicht and say it's something German.
Lichtsphere.
September 12th, we have Rayman Legends Definitive Edition. And September 14th is Kingdom, New Lands, and Semispheres.
All right, let's go to the Community Pulse.
All right, here we are in the Community Pulse, and again, now I'm finally going to kind of get into my opinions. We asked what you guys think of the possibility or the potential future or the potential for future games to require an SD memory card in order to access all their content. All right, so let's read some of your responses first. Keith Steinbach wrote, I don't think it's inherently bad to require a memory card for certain games. If I recall correctly, early in the 360's life cycle, Xbox Live Arcade games had a hard cap on file size to be able to accommodate models with no hard drive using a memory card. I assume this is something for digital games specifically. Storage is only getting cheaper anyways. But he does edit. I can easily see companies like EA abusing this option and programming the games in an inefficient, bloated, and lazy manner.
Well, we've already pretty much confirmed that this will be required for physical games as well.
Yes. In fact, they showed off that the NBA game is going to be the first to have basically a message at the top saying this requires a memory card.
Yes. I can see that it might not inherently be bad to require a memory card, though I don't think it's an ideal route to take. There's going to be plenty of people out there who don't automatically buy a memory card with their console because they expect the console to have enough memory to support any games that they're buying, especially if it's a physical copy of a game.
I have to say, I'm so surprised to hear you have that opinion. I totally figured JV was just like, it's a memory card. You throw some money at the problem, solved.
I did want to make sure it's clear. I actually feel like this particular problem isn't the biggest of deals because of just how prolific micro SD cards are nowadays. When you buy a digital camera, you expect to buy a micro SD card. If you buy something else, there's certain gadgets that you'll need a separate SD card for. And if Nintendo proliferates the idea that micro SD cards are needed, it might not be as big of a deal. It's still not a good route to take at this moment.
See, my thing, I agree that it's not a huge problem. I do feel that it differs from things like the cameras in that I feel like of all the consoles, Nintendo is the one you have the expectation that this is an complete object. I mean, we wrote that whole reaction piece to the hidden costs of the Nintendo Switch. Now, this could actually be used as an argument to say there is a hidden cost. The Switch does not cost $300. It now costs $300 plus $40 SD card. And that now changes the dynamic of it being the economy option. Now, if it's only for some games, I probably don't think I have that much of a problem, because honestly, I'm probably just not going to buy those games unless it's something I really want. I'm going to do, even on principle, even if I have the card, I might be like, nope, I don't believe this. I don't like this. And I'll just basically vote with my dollars and try to sway companies away from this, because I do believe it is the kind of thing that it could become bloatware over time. Like, all right, sure, it's just one game here and there. Over time, I'm going to I might need more memory cards, because every game I play, and I'm going to be playing a lot to review, is going to start requiring, downloads here and there.
Right. So I am going to bring up this other comment, which I feel is a bit in line with how I feel.
Okay.
So S. Scott Tilton said, "It's annoying, but it makes sense if you understand how computer systems in general use storage space. While RAM is the primary memory used to run processes, just about all computers use spare storage space as a secondary means. That's part of why your computer gets super slow when you start to reach max hard drive space. Bigger, more powerful games need more resources, so while it's annoying, it's understandable." And yeah, in my sense, I can kind of get that there's going to be a technological need for more space as games get bigger and bigger. And there might even be a bit of a fault on Nintendo's side for having such a small amount of built-in storage space within the Switch itself.
Honestly, I think that if this does become something that we have to buy over time, and, while everything he said makes perfect sense as to why they might need to do it, the reason they need to do it is, like you said, it's Nintendo's fault. And if it is something that we're going to need for even, let's say, a quarter of the games, that card should be packaged with the system and factored into the price. Or they decide, all right, we're going to stop selling at a profit of the console, and we're going to use that, extra, cost to include a memory card with it, even if it's just something to get you decently started. It doesn't have to be a huge one, but I think there should be something included with it, because if that internal memory is not enough to do what most people need to do, then you should that should be part of the package.
Now, let's keep in mind other consoles also do this type of stuff. Mm-hmm. For example, Final Fantasy 15 is a 50 gigabyte file on the Blu-ray disc, but you're also required to install a 6.5 gigabytes installation before you can even play the game. That it's something that's actually starting to grow as an industry standard in order to improve the performance of these games. So it might become more standard for these micro SD cards to be mandatory.
If they're going to make them, and they're going to make those themed ones, they better do something cool or look cool. Like, I want at least like a fun, I want to see Mario's face on that SD card or something like that there. Like, it's just...
Themed SD cards are so dumb.
I know. It is really dumb, because you stick it in and you just never see it again. You never see that thing again.
Yeah, it's silly.
Actually, though, one of the comments I thought spoke to me probably most was from Jeff Kappenberg, and he wrote, "I remember when you needed overpriced proprietary memory cards just to save your game, and everyone just took it for granted. And just like now, sports games ate up a ton of memory." I will say, I fought that when that was a thing. I hated that when that was a thing. And I resisted that as a normal thing. But I do remember that, we all had to buy those memory cards for like the PlayStation and stuff like that when CD games became the big thing and they didn't have cartridges to save your data. Anything involving SD cards is a godsend compared to how things used to be. And this is unlikely to be a commonplace outside of the occasional third-party game. File size is rarely an issue with Nintendo's game. They're saying games can require SD cards, not that it'll be the new norm. Once again, an individual case is being blown out of proportion for clicks. I'm going to say that I don't feel that, at least the articles I wrote, maybe there's some, clickbaity oones out there. I felt they've all treated this fairly even-handedly. At least the sites I visited did not seem to kind of...
over sensationalize it, right?
Right, exactly.
Now, I can definitely understand Jeff's perspective in this, because this can be something that can be blown out of proportion. But considering the route that other consoles take, hard drive installs are becoming more standard. It's becoming a thing that's expected, and I feel like Nintendo's just a little bit behind when it comes to built-in memory.
Yeah. You know, in fact, actually, the more we talk about it, the more I'm starting to think about how many like SD cards I might have from cameras and things like that, and it's almost like when we used to have to buy batteries for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like,
and now they're all built in.
yeah, right, exactly. Like, I feel like that's today's battery. It's like you have to buy this memory, and like at least it's a commodity that's used amongst several things in your life, like your camera or, you know, whatever little portable memory thing you use for your computer. So as I talk about it, I feel a little more comfortable, and I hear people kind of putting this into perspective. There's a part of me that hates it, but I do feel like everyone seems to see that this is just going to become a norm, and it's probably just best that I get this anger out of my system and just kind of like accept this sooner than later.
Micro SD cards make me so angry.
As long as it's not the kind, like, as long as it doesn't get just bloated, and like they said, it's not the kind of thing that they just get lazy and make the games cheaper to make just because they know that you can download all the stuff you need later.
So I definitely want to also bring up John Mullen's quotes. I feel like this was inevitable with only 32 gigabytes internal, of which some of that is taken up by the OS itself. At least you don't have to use proprietary cards like the Vita that were way too expensive.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. I
would be so much more upset about this if there were proprietary Nintendo micro SD cards.
And you know, yeah, I did buy, I forgot it was so long ago, but I did buy a Vita memory card. I hated having to do it, but that was back when I was doing the Pocket Players, so I had to have a Vita to like cover on that podcast. But yeah, I mean, at least with this, an SD memory card you can use for other things if you decide you don't need all that safe.
And now I definitely don't want to sound like I'm defending this direction, but it does feel like it is a bit of an inevitability, and it's not necessarily a laziness situation. Some games really just take a massive amount of space. Like that Final Fantasy 15 example, you cannot claim that Square Enix was lazy with Final Fantasy 15, but some games really just require that extra digital installation, to be able to support all of the data that they're pushing out at once.
I mean, yeah, that's a great example, especially because there was some more news related to Final Fantasy 15, and they did
it coming to the Switch,
right? And they're talking about them looking even more about the specs and stuff. And if that came to Switch, I think that it definitely, if it needed download data for, PlayStation 4, it absolutely would have to have some sort of download install on the Switch.
Right, exactly. That's why I brought that specific example up. If they were to bring Final Fantasy 15 to the Nintendo Switch, that's a game that they're inevitably going to need this digital download version of, or they're going to inevitably need a separate digital installation despite having a physical cartridge.
Okay.
Just because of the sheer scale of that game.
All right, so I guess our surprisingly agreed upon a position here is that it's something that we don't like, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just it's just kind of the direction of how games are going.
I don't feel like it's a marketing ploy to sell more micro SD cards.
Okay, that's a good way of it.
And yeah, I don't like it. I don't want there to be so many extraneous dependencies, but that's just how the technology seems to be going.
All right. And you know me, I'm always looking to be the grump on these things and put my foot down and say this is ridiculous. I'm not buying one of those things, and I haven't bought an SD card yet, but. All right, I think I'm going to stand down, and I'm going to, at least on a case-by-case basis, be willing to get one of these cards for the sake of certain games. Maybe we'll find out this is all not a big deal, and we're going to see maybe 5 games a year that actually require it.
Yeah, I wish you'd step back from that ledge, my friend.
Well, I think we should jump off totally into the deep end and just end it all right here.
Yeah, good episode. And if you guys did enjoy this episode and want to support us further, definitely please check out our Patreon website. It's patreon.com/theswitchcast. We definitely use this money to improve our services, keep the servers running, and use it to give you guys as much content as we possibly can.
And don't forget, it's Patreon backers are the first ones who get to show up on episodes of Switch Topics.
Yeah, you guys are definitely the priority when it comes to being on the show and collaborating with us directly. Another way to support us that's non-monetary is reviewing us on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen. This is a great way to support us without using dollar bills or anything like that. It's really important that we get as many reviews as possible.
We're at 96. I'm pushing for 100, guys. Please.
Yeah, we're almost there.
Just 4 more. There's 10,000 of you guys at least out there hearing this episode. 4 of you people to review. We hit our goal. Come on.
We also have an awesome Discord chat. We can't talk about this community enough. You guys are great. Join us. We'll have a link to the Discord in the show notes. And email us at kc@theswitchcast.com or jv@theswitchcast.com.
And if you want to follow us on Twitter and get alerts about all the sort of things we post in new episodes, follow us on Twitter @TheSwitchCast. You can go to the Facebook group as well and join the conversation there. That's also where you can leave comments and questions for the Community Pulse. That's where I check for those. That'll be a link on the show notes. And then there's the SwitchCast Friends list, which is a great way to add any number of people so you always have someone to play with, or join the tournaments in the Discord chat that we mentioned. And thank you, HeatleyBros, for the theme music. And until next time, everybody,
switch it up.